Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Stuart sent me a note about something happening in Nevada. And there are things similar to this happening all across this great nation of ours, in all 50 states. So you should be aware of this concept. And Terry Russell wrote the story for KOLO TV. Driver's license rules change at 71 years of age. So as you get older, you'll recall there was a time when you were too young to drive. And as you then get older, there might be a time when to continue driving, you've got to jump through some more hoops. So here's the situation. About 2 weeks ago, one of the viewers of KOLO opened a notice from the DMV, which said that the driver, who would be turning 71 years old soon, needed to have a physical examination before the license could be renewed. So this is what he got in the mail. It's a 3-page correspondence. Had not only an examination form for a physical exam for the physician to fill out, but a form for an optometrist to fill out as well. You're sitting there, you know your expiration's coming up, you get the thing in the mail, you open it up, and it says, oh, by the way, here's the doctor's exam and the optometrist's exam. But all of this results from a law passed in 1995. Now, the letter is simply confusing because the DMV even says this is confusing many people, but you got to understand. So a person from the DMV said, after age 71, if you want to renew by mail, that's fine. We do ask you to go through a couple of steps. We need to get a note from an optometrist and a note from your physician. But that's if you renew by mail. If you renew by mail, if you go in person and renew, that's not how that works. So, of course, if you want to do business at the DMV without having to come into the office, you do it by mail. However, if you are 71 years old or older and you want to go to the DMV in person, a doctor's note is not necessary. Okay? Now, they don't have any doctors at the DMV. What they're presumably going to do is just look at you. And if you look like you're capable of driving, they're going to let you continue to drive as long as you do whatever else is necessary to get the license. And, of course, they administer the eye test. So the vision test is something that I think pretty much everybody does everywhere when you go in. Now, the interesting thing is I literally just got my license renewed not too long ago. Literally. I don't know why I put that in there, but I did. And I guess it's part of a story I'm doing here. It's become literary of sorts. And I managed to do that by mail, okay? So all I did at that time was just pay some money. And I think I went online and did it. And didn't have to get any forms for anything. But I know that the last time I went in and was standing at the Secretary of State's office counter getting my driver's license, I know that I had to take the eye test, the vision test. And so that is something that you are familiar with, I assume. Now, the information is in the letter from the DMV that says if you come in person, no doctor's thing is necessary, and we'll give you the eye test, so there's no optometrist thing either, okay? It's just if you're 71 and older and you're renewing by mail. So the DMV spokesperson recommends the in-person route. And of course, remember that you can book appointments, which will make it handier for you. Just make sure that you understand that to book an appointment, there might be some time there that you got to work with, and don't do it to the point where, oh, my license expires tomorrow. I'll call tomorrow and book an appointment because they might go, you can't get one today. So the closer to the license expiration date, all appointment time slots could be filled. Getting into the DMV before the license expiration date may not be possible, and your license could expire. Whether license renewals by mail or in person, renewal is required every 4 years as opposed to every 8 years once you hit 71. So a lot of states, it's either 6 or 8 years between license renewals, okay? And a lot of states do have a date where if you hit a certain age, it drops from being every 8 years to every 6 years or something. But not every state does. And I was kind of thinking about this, because I'd never stopped to think about how this varies from state to state, although I often talk about how laws do, in fact, vary wildly from state to state. So I looked it up. For example, in Florida, you have to renew your license every 8 years until you hit 80. And at 80, you've got to renew it every 6 years. And I saw somewhere doing all this research about the demographics, that is the ages and so on, of people in large groups where you're studying just groups of people. And they're talking about how the population in America is in fact aging. And they said that, I think they said drivers over the age of 70, it'll be 1 in 5. That is who holds the licenses. 1 in 5 licensed drivers will be over the age of 70 in the very near future. So that is something that will be more and more common. But you also have to understand, in Florida, after 80, you will also have to take the mature driver vision test. And there's a form for that. And so you can take that to your doctor. And I'm not sure if you can go in person and do the vision test. I believe you can. But again, I'm not licensed in Florida, although I know people who are. And obviously it depends, like I said, what state you're in and so on. So I thought, well, Steve, you should at least look up Michigan. That is where you practice law and where you spend most of your time driving. Michigan has no special rules for drivers based on age. There will be a vision test required at renewal. Secretary of State personnel will conduct the test for free. If they require it, the driver must have an additional eye test performed by an outside ophthalmologist or optometrist, who must then complete a vision specialist's statement of examination and conduct the exam within 6 months of the renewal request. So I suspect that means if you go in, they give you the test, and you fail, then they're going to send you to go get that done. In-person renewal at a Secretary of State's office is necessary if any of the following apply. You have any health changes that might affect your ability to drive. You renewed online or by mail at your last renewal. As they won't let you just keep doing it by mail. It has been more than 4 years since your last in-person renewal, or they cannot verify your social security number. Meanwhile, there is no written test required at renewal, generally speaking, and you're not required to take a road test unless something convinces the Secretary of State's office that you are impaired as a driver, not by alcohol, but by some kind of disability that keeps you from being able to drive safely. Now, one thing you should know, and I was surprised to learn this, the Michigan Secretary of State's office actually has a process where you can narc out other drivers. And for those of you who want to know about the origins of the word narc, you can argue all you want about it, but it comes from TV shows, 60s and 70s, when a narcotics officer might go undercover. And so there's some really uncool guy hanging out with high school kids. And you turn to him and you go, dude, are you a narc? But it became a verb also. You can narc somebody out, which is to rat them out to the police. So you can actually rat out other drivers. The Michigan Secretary of State's office will accept requests for driver reexamination from medical professionals, law enforcement, family members, friends, or concerned citizens. All information provided is confidential, but anonymous tips cannot be accepted. So what that means is that if you knew somebody who was legitimately unsafe to drive, you could report them, but you just can't do it anonymously. And keep in mind that once you do that, they would, at the state, know who you are. And it's unclear what steps someone could take to figure out who you were, because it says here, information will remain confidential to the extent permitted by law, which means that there's probably some exception. So I was a little surprised to see that, although I will admit I have been in a situation with a family where I was part of the group in an intervention setting where somebody was told by the family, you're not going to drive anymore. And that is a very, very difficult discussion to have. And I understand that some people are going to say, Steve, if it ain't the Secretary of State's office, no one can tell me I can't drive anymore. That's true. That's true legally. But in the intervention type situation I'm describing, the person finally came around and agreed. But it took some time, because as you can imagine, if you've been driving cars all your life, and one day the time comes when you cannot do that safely anymore, you don't want to admit that to yourself. You don't want to think that's a permanent condition. You want to think, oh, I had a bad day today. Tomorrow will be better. And so if the time ever comes when my loved one, just kidding, when my family says, Steve, you can go look at that Viper. You can ride in the passenger seat, but you can't drive it anymore. That'll be a sad day. I recognize that. But that day very well will come somewhere down the road. But we've also known people who've continued driving well into the years beyond 70. And some of them that I've known have been great drivers. Question you have is, who do you trust more? That 16-year-old kid who just got his license, or the 75-year-old you know who's a good driver? And I know a lot of 75-year-olds that take all day long over the 16-year-old. But that also varies from person to person. So just so you know that this is going to change from state to state. But perhaps if you are, let's just say, nearing retirement age, you might want to double check the state you are in and see what laws get kicked in as you get older. Because many states, Michigan does not, but many states do. They say at a specific age, the rules change. And it might simply be that you got to come in more often to get your license renewed. Or it might be there's an extra test for you to take if you want to renew by mail. And that's what confused people at KOLO TV's audience, was that there was a letter coming in the mail and it says, here are the forms you need. And people were assuming those forms were necessary in all settings, when in reality they were only necessary if you're choosing to renew by mail. Now you might go, but who in their right mind would go to their doctor when it's just as easy to go to the Secretary of State's office? Well, I know some people go to the doctor more than once a year. And if you're going to the doctor anyway, bring the form and have the guy fill the form out, or the gal, and then you submit that with your application, do it by mail. And that might save you a trip if you were going to the doctor anyway. So I'm not going to speculate about that. But the point is that even in Nevada, where these forms exist, they're not required if you go in and renew in person. I said check the laws in the state you are in. Also check the laws in the state you might go to if you retire, or if you spend a lot of time there. I know a lot of people, a very good friend of mine, Dwayne, if he's watching. Hey, Dwayne, how you doing, my friend? And I know other people as well, who spend their winters in Florida and their summers in Michigan. Best of both worlds. And it's not uncommon. So you might want to find out what the laws are in the state you're going to. Now, I suspect that my friends from Michigan just keep their Michigan driver's licenses while they're driving down there. But I've also known some people who go back and forth a few times and go, you know something? I'm going to live down here full-time, year-round. And I've seen people who've done that. And you might want to double-check that also. It might not be prohibitive. It might not be something that keeps you from moving there. But it should be something you're aware of. And I've always talked about the fact that, many people who get in trouble with the law or have issues with the law, it's not that they set out to break the law, they just simply don't know what the law is. So if you're going to retire to a state, double check that as well. So driver's license rules change at 71 in Nevada. Some states they change, some states they don't. This is from Terry Russell at KOLO TV. And Stuart with a U sent that to me. Stuart, thank you very much. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Small deeds done are better than great deeds planned.